he went on, and that's when he started to tell me about all the previous attempts that had been made to do this, and I started thinking, okay, this is not a good idea. This will never happen. And then he said, so in other words, it's a great idea. You should really do it. So I said, oh, okay, I'll think about it. And, Danny went to talk to Don and got his blessing for the project to go ahead. I started putting some stuff together, and things just kind of snowballed from there, and 3 years later, here we are. I really hope this is something that everybody will enjoy.
Well, I think everyone enjoys it because they're sitting there, so that's the good news. It is true, you know, that, Don, do you want to bring up a chair and sit with us? No? Are you sure? This is his moment. He wrote the book. Are you sure?
Well, I don't see him.
All right. He's the best. So I remember, you know, I was in the hospital, and this is the truth. No one told me about the Don Post thing for 3 or 4 days, because it was the day that I went down was the same day that Don Post went down, when God tried to take me out of the world. And I know that it was 3 days, 4 days later that finally someone said there's something else I want to tell you about. Because you know when someone's sick, you don't want to like freak them out more. And I found out Don Post Studios closed, and somebody bought the 1948 Frankenstein that never came up. It all happened like in the same day, and I almost died. So Lee, once you started writing the book, what was the first step? Bring us through the steps quickly, as you see them.
Again, for me, the first step was get in touch with the people who actually had the expertise, because I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be. I just happen to be blessed with a lot of friends who do have the knowledge, and they know the history of Don Post Studios. So I just got in touch with all of them, started getting materials from them, started picking their brains, and started putting my own stuff together. There's a lot of old interviews online, tracked all of those down, started making copious notes. Then once I had a whole volume of material, then it just became a matter of breaking it down and trying to organize it. And then I realized I had enough material to do maybe 3 or 4 volumes that would be an expensive set that nobody would ever buy.
Well, you and me and you, these people.
In other words, yeah, nobody else would buy. So really it became a matter of how do I organize this, and how do I try to make as many people happy as possible. And that's when it really became discouraging. And at one point, I started asking different collectors, how do you envision a book on Don Post Studios being? You know, what do you want this book to look like? And I would ask 20 different people, and I would get 20 completely different answers. And I will admit, I actually got to the point where I was ready to just say, forget it, I'm not going to do this. No, as it turned out, nobody is going to like this. I'm just going to put something together, and nobody's going to be happy. Nobody's going to be satisfied. I had no idea where to go. And I ended up having a little talk with Kathy Tharp that day. And she was the one who told me, well, you're the one who's doing this, it's your book. Just put together what you want. And the more I thought about that, that really kind of resonated with me. And this way, if I'm just doing it for myself and not for anybody else, that feeling's going to come through. So that picked me up a little bit, and I kept going, and like, here we are. It came together, and a lot of people seem to be very happy with it. So that's been a real blessing to hear all the positive words, hear all the comments, and just hear that people like it. And I think probably the greatest thing for me personally is people will open it, and I mean, all of us, we're all in our 40s and 50s now. flipping through this, and you can actually watch people becoming kids again. And that's just been the best part of this.
Well, it's an interesting thing, you guys. I mean, this is like preaching to the choir. So many talented people, sculptors, creators sitting in front of us. But something that happens, as Eric Piggers was talking about, the cultural impact of Don Post Studios, there is this mass ownership, this implicit ownership of Batman or Superman or Don Post. And so they make the Batman movie and they don't make it the way you envision it, and you're like, that's terrible, it's a terrible Batman movie. I remember right when the book came out, we were both getting a little frustrated with people saying the initial book, how come this isn't in that? How come that isn't in that? And I started saying, how come you didn't write it? How come you didn't publish it? You know, the guy, no, but this, I don't know if you know this about Lee, but in his real life edition at Mask Fest.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a backstory here. I've told some of you this story before, I've discussed it in interviews before, but for those who haven't heard, what happened is we had the book set to go. We were going to do a nice hardcover edition, softcover edition. We had a book that we really wanted people to see. And then 5 weeks to the day before the launch event at Mask Fest, the printer contacted us and told us, sorry, we underestimated the size of the book and we can't do it. So we had our commitments to Mask Fest that we had to honor. You know, they really went above and beyond for us, and we ended up scrambling. We got somebody who was able to give us 50 advance copies for Mask Fest, and then another 450 copies on top of that. We could only get soft covers, and we had to cut a lot of material. So we went into Mask Fest with those 50, and within 20, we honestly did not know what the reaction was going to be to this book. We had thought, okay, we'll probably sell all 50 over the weekend. We had a Q&A booked for the Saturday afternoon, and we thought, you know, maybe we'll have to use that Q&A to try and push the last few books. As it turned out, within 20 minutes, all 50 copies were gone.
20 minutes. And did I get mine? No.
You would have gotten yours if you hadn't been up in Vancouver with Grumpy Cat.
That's right, I was with Grumpy Cat. So 20 minutes, we sold those 50, and then it took another 3 or 5 days to sell the rest of the run, right? Everything was nothing, as I recall.
It was a couple weeks after that.
Couple weeks. But we sold the edition out quickly.
Probably because it took that long to ship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, the remaining 450, I mean, the entire 500 copy run sold out very quickly. So then we're like, what do we do now? Are we going to do another run? Is there still a sustained demand for this book? Let's just wait and see. So we started, this is it. So we thought it over, and we were well aware of the fact that, you know, people who spent money, especially the people who went and dropped $100, $150 on eBay for this book, once they found out we were coming out with a new and better edition, they were not going to be very happy with us. But in the end, we decided we're going to do the best book possible. And if people were unhappy with it, they didn't understand, so be it. We'll respect their feelings, but we're not going to let that stop us from producing a better book. So that's what we did. And perhaps doing a special collector's edition in a collector box with a latex cover. And we thought that'd be a neat idea, but it just wasn't doable. So we ended up thinking, how can we possibly make this book even better? And that's when we came up with the slipcase idea. So what we ended up doing is, we started thinking, okay, who can do this? And fortunately, because it has the name Don Post Studios on it, there were a lot of artists that would have been very happy to help us out with this. However, I'd gotten quite familiar with the work of Greg Duffy here from Creature Revenge Studios, and him, his wife Jennifer, and their crew in Charlotte. They do a lot of fantastic work. So we decided they should be the ones to do this. And And it's funny, we started take the pre-orders for the slipcase editions, and they just started trickling in. They didn't come in fast and furious. However, as soon as Greg finished this slipcase and we started posting a few pictures, we were sold out within an hour.
Wow.
So, again, it's everybody else coming together and making this project work. I'm just one part of it. And really, everybody else deserves just as much credit as I do. But, yeah,
That's very nice. The truth is, it's very kind of you to say, but this was an enormous undertaking, and everybody else was just there at your back. You're the one, you were our general, you were moving forward, and that's why it exists, and that's why it's as perfect as it is.
it's really neat how this came to be. And again, it was designed by our late friend John Fasano, who I think would have absolutely loved this weekend. And it was sculpted by Rob Berman and commissioned by Matt Post. And Matt, thank you very much for allowing us to use the master that was made. And what we ended up doing is we sent it off to Greg and Jen, and Greg added the hair, he finished the copies, made the mold, and we had to come up with a name for the mask. And Greg had a really good idea. He was going to call it the Don, being Don Post was seen as the godfather of Halloween. But we end up looking at this one photograph. It's on the hang tag. It's also in the book, just in case any of you want to buy a book and look it up. You can see it for yourself. It's in much better quality than on the hang tag. Just throwing that out there. But there's this old photo of Don at work, and his wife had handwritten on the bottom, "Genius." So I suggested to Greg, why don't we just call it Genius and credit Mrs. Post with the name. And that's what we did.
The guy who can't read, Corey Glenn.
First off, I wanted to say thanks so much for this amazing book. Compared to everybody else in this room, I'm new to mask collecting, and this is going to be an amazing resource for me, along with, as you said, Pete's incredible blog. It's just great to have. And I was just curious, yourself, how long have you been collecting masks? And a little background on you as a mask
A
collector.
year, 1 or 2 years?
About that, yeah.
No.
No, I used to love masks when I was a kid. And of course, my mom was always the one who would say, no, you can't have a mask. You can't breathe, you can't see, if you walk out into the street, you'll get hit by a car.
Same on.
And I mean, those are all valid points. However, they didn't result in me getting a mask. But eventually, yes, I did get my first mask. And I always loved the masks. I could never really afford them. So I just looked at them in the magazines. And it really wasn't until I became an adult and started having this disposable income stuff that I started to, buy these things I started to really love when I was a kid. And it's just sort of grown from there.